Hey everybody, Chris Larson from CrossbowExpert.com. A lot of people ask us, how do we make our crossbow quieter and why is it louder than my buddy's compound crossbow? Well, let's answer that question first. What we've got here on a crossbow is we've got a real narrow axle to axle and we've got a lot of weight here, 175 pounds on this crossbow. We take this compound bow here, we've got a lot more room and a lot less weight. This crossbow is a 70 pounder. There's lots of 60 pounder, 50 pounders out there. So we got a lot less draw weight and a lot larger package with that compound bow. More draw weight, smaller package here. And basically your sound that you're hearing is energy leaving the crossbow. Energy equals sound as it's dissipating from the crossbow when you pull the trigger. There's a bunch of different ways that we can go about trimming some sound off of our crossbows, and probably the easiest and one of the least expensive ways of doing it is getting yourself a set of wrenches, going through your crossbow, and this is something really you should be doing anyway, but going through and making sure all the fasteners are tight on your crossbow. Some of the places where we see things come loose more often are going to be like right in here in this scope mount. This is just a spot that as we're putting our crossbow in our case, sometimes things get loosened up here, so you want to always check these things, make sure they're tight. And quiver brackets seem to be a spot that come loose pretty often too. So those are places that you should check out all the time. But if you do this regularly and you notice there's one spot that always seems to have a loose bolt, some blue Loctite on that is going to keep that thing from coming loose again. But just always keep an eye on those bolts. Everything, make sure everything is nice and tight. All your fasteners are tight. That's not only going to make it quieter, but just a safer shooting situation. And in the case of the scope mount, if these things start coming loose, you're just not going to be as accurate. So you just want to make sure everything stays tight. The other thing is rubber. So we see this crossbow. This is a Stealth FX4. There's a lot of rubber on this. These Bojacks kits, they've got it up on the stirrup. You notice the stirrup here is rubberized as well. All this rubber is going to help kind of absorb some of this energy and make this crossbow quieter. So you can do a lot of different things with a lot of different crossbows, adding rubber. You notice in this crossbow, this is actually our Bulldog 400 suppressor. We made a suppressor, basically took the Excalibur suppression kit and added it to a Bulldog. You see it's got the string stops. And a lot of crossbows, especially the higher end ones, are coming with those string stops, but even if they don't, like this crossbow doesn't have them, they can be added later on. So string stops are a big deal. With Excaliburs, what we've found, and we'll do a video on this pretty soon, these air brakes make an incredible difference. If you're only going to do one thing to your crossbow and you got an Excalibur, the air brakes, dissipator bars are going to make a huge difference. So adding this rubber and all these different sound things can make a huge difference to make your crossbow quieter. There is more cost with them compared to this, but a lot of these things you'll see a pretty dramatic difference when it comes to sound. Another thing you can do is change your arrows. Now we take these two arrows right here. I've got a Pro Light arrow. This one without the tip is 270 grains. If you're using a 100 grain tip, you're at 370. This one is 330 grains. This is the Pro Elite, so you'd be at 430 with your 100 grain tip. And you got to understand that the crossbow and the limbs and all these things absorb this energy and dissipate at the shot, but the arrows actually take a lot of this energy too. That's how we can shoot animals and shoot with these arrows, is they're taking a lot of the energy away. So if you've ever been around when someone dry fires a crossbow, you'll notice that it is super loud, way louder than just a normal crossbow shot. And that's because the arrow didn't absorb any of that energy. So if we can put that energy into a little heavier arrow, that's going to absorb more of the energy and make the crossbow quieter. Now let's say you've got a dozen arrows and you're like, I don't want to go and buy more arrows. The other thing you could do is just switch your tips. So if you don't have any broadheads and maybe you're shooting 100 grain right now, you could go to 150 grain tip, add 50 grains to that arrow. It's probably going to make you more accurate too. You're just going to add to your front of center. Obviously, if you've got 100 grain broadheads, you're going to have to make a decision there. It will slow down your crossbow too, so your point of impact is going to be a little bit different. But keep in mind, it does slow down the crossbow, but it's going to carry that energy further down range. It's going to give you more momentum. If you're shooting big animals like elk and stuff like that, having that more momentum and heavier weight in the front end is going to be a big deal, help you downrange, but it's also going to take some sound off the crossbow. Really, probably my favorite tip though for quieting down your crossbow, and this is completely free, I'm not selling you anything here. A lot of people think about the sound of their crossbow when they pull the trigger, what that sound is. They don't think about is the sound of the crossbow before they pull the trigger. So here's our safety, and I hear this sound a lot on the range. When we're shooting on the range, we're not really thinking about sound, we're just shooting targets. So we kind of mindlessly hit this safety and do things mindlessly, and that makes a lot of sound. If you get that deer in front of you and you click that off like that, I can guarantee you that deer's gonna go and look up at you. So when you're on the range and you're shooting your crossbow, what I would do is practice moving that safety quietly. So when you are hunting, you're already used to it. It's part of your process to move that safety quietly. You don't have to think about it, because this is what happens. A lot of guys are like, oh, I'll do it quietly when I'm hunting. Well, they've been mindlessly doing it for so long that when that big buck's in front of them, the brain turns off, they click it, and guess what happens? So if you can make that part of your process, using that safety quietly on the range, when you go out and go hunting, it'll already be part of your process. You'll already be using it quietly. You'll be ready to go. That'll be something that takes a lot of sound off, can make a huge difference when you're hunting. Doesn't cost you anything to do that. So those are my 4 awesome tips for taking the sound off your crossbow. I think they'll make you a better hunter, and they're going to make your crossbow a better piece of equipment for you to go hunting with this fall. Thanks for watching. Check out other videos on YouTube and on Facebook.